I never thought I'd hear my own son's voice break the bond one spent a lifetime building. "Get out, Dad. Or I'll call the cops." The words didn't echo, they carved. Straight through the walls, through the air, through every piece of wood I'd ever laid with my own hands. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. Maybe he was joking, or angry, or drunk, something that could be undone with time. But the look in his eyes said otherwise. It wasn't rage. It was distance. Cold, deliberate distance, the kind that doesn't come from argument, but from influence. Behind him, the woman he married stood by the doorway, arms folded, lips pressed tight in satisfaction. And in that moment, I understood, this wasn't his voice. It was hers, wearing his face. I looked around the living room, my living room, and everything I'd built stared back at me like a stranger. The old clock on the mantel ticked softly, steady and uncaring. The faded photos on the wall seemed to watch in silence, my late wife's smile frozen forever in glass. My hand trembled against the banister, the same one I carved when he was born. "My house," I whispered under my breath. "My name on the deed. My sweat in every brick, yet I'm the intruder now." He took a step closer. "Dad, just go. Don't make this harder." The tremor in his voice was small, but real. Somewhere inside him, I think the boy I raised was still fighting to speak. But the man standing before me, my own flesh and blood, had already chosen a side. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just stared at him until the words ran out of air. And as I turned toward the door, the sound of my footsteps on the floorboards was louder than his threat. That day, something inside me didn't break, it just went quiet. Before I tell you what happened next, if you believe no parent deserves this kind of betrayal, subscribe to this channel and stay with me. You'll want to hear how this story ends. I wasn't always alone in that house. There was a time when its walls rang with laughter, when the scent of my wife's baking floated through every corner, and when my son's footsteps sounded like the promise of a future I couldn't wait to see. My name's Harold Langston. I'm 68 now, a retired woodworker, born and raised in the same Tennessee valley where my father once farmed. I built my home the way I built everything in my life, steady, careful, with my hands and with my heart. I remember the day we finished it, Margaret and I. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. White porch railings, wide enough for 2 rocking chairs, a magnolia tree out front that she planted the summer we moved in. She said she wanted something that would keep blooming long after we were gone. I guess she got her wish. We raised Daniel there, our only child. He was a good boy. Curious. Always asking questions, always following me to the workshop, his little hands covered in sawdust. "One day, Dad," he used to say, "I'll build my own house, just like you." I believed him. I believed everything he ever said. When Margaret got sick, the world shifted. Cancer doesn't take from you all at once, it steals in pieces. First her laughter, then her strength, then her voice. Daniel was away at college by then, chasing degrees and dreams, and I told him not to come back until she was better. But she never got better. The day she passed, the magnolia bloomed early. I took that as her way of saying goodbye. After the funeral, Daniel stayed for a few weeks. We fixed the porch rail that had started to rot, painted the kitchen walls, and sat on the porch at night, quiet, just listening to the crickets. He'd inherited her calmness, her patience. I saw so much of her in him, it gave me something to hold on to. When he left for the city, he promised to visit every month. And for a while, he did. Always with a smile, always with stories about his new job, his apartment, the world beyond these small hills. I was proud, maybe too proud. Then he met Rachel. I first saw her in a photo, all sharp edges and polished charm. The kind of woman who looked like she belonged in magazines, not in muddy driveways or on porches with chipped paint. "She's something special, Dad," he said, eyes shining. She sees the world like I do. I didn't doubt it. I just didn't realize how she saw it. When he brought her home for Thanksgiving, she wore heels that sank into the dirt and a perfume that didn't belong anywhere near pine trees. Still, I tried. I really did. I told her stories, offered her food, made her laugh once or twice. But every time she looked at the house, I saw it, that flicker of disapproval. Like the place was a relic, something to be remodeled, repainted, repurposed. She complimented the potential of the house more than its warmth. That was the first sign. Daniel didn't notice, or maybe he didn't want to. He was in love, and I was too busy trying to keep peace to say what I felt. After they got married, things changed. The visits stopped being about seeing me and became about checking in. They'd stay a few hours, talk about investments, renovations, the future. Rachel started calling the house, the property. Once, she even joked, "We'll have to do something with this place someday." I laughed then, a small, hollow laugh, but something inside me twisted. Because I realized what she meant wasn't live in it. It was take it. Daniel's tone toward me softened in all the wrong ways. He started speaking to me like I was fragile. "Dad, maybe you shouldn't work in the shed anymore, or, you don't need to worry about bills, I'll handle them soon." I wanted to believe he cared. But it wasn't care. It was preparation. When he and Rachel moved in temporarily, to help me out, I told myself it was just family being family. They were saving for a house of their own. I even cleared out the master bedroom so they could have more space. For a while, it felt good. Like the house had life again. We ate dinners together, laughed over old stories, even watched the same football games Margaret and I once did. I thought maybe, just maybe, things were turning around. But every good memory has a shadow, and I started noticing small things. The way Rachel would take calls in the next room and lower her voice. The way Daniel would avoid my eyes when I talked about the future. The way their laughter stopped when I walked in. Then one day, I overheard Rachel say something that made my stomach drop. She was on the phone, didn't realize I was behind the door. "Yeah," she whispered, "once the deed settled, we'll list it. It's too old anyway." The deed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the ticking clock the only sound in the room. I stared at the family photo on the wall, Margaret's smile, Daniel's boyish grin, my arm around them both. And I whispered to myself, "I gave you everything. I built this with my hands, and you're planning to take it from me." The next morning, I acted like nothing happened. Made breakfast, fixed the porch swing, smiled when they walked by. Because that's what builders do when their foundation starts to crack, they don't panic. They listen. They measure. They wait. And deep down, I already knew the storm that was coming. The first real crack appeared one Saturday morning, about a month after that phone call I overheard. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee mug in hand, scrolling through his phone. Rachel was standing by the window, her tone crisp and cold as she spoke on hers. "Yes, the appraisal is still scheduled. Don't worry, it's an older structure, but we'll make it worth their while." An appraisal. I stood in the hallway, half hidden, pretending to dust the shelf. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The word hit me like a hammer. My mind started connecting dots I'd been too naive to see before. When she hung up, she turned to Daniel. "They'll be here next week. I told them to come when your father's out. I don't want him getting sentimental." He frowned. "Rachel." "What?" she said, sharp now. "We've talked about this. It's for the best. He can't keep up with the place, and we can't just wait around until." She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew how it ended. "Until he's gone." I backed away before they saw me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echo off the walls. That evening, I asked Daniel to join me out on the porch, the same place I'd once taught him how to sand wood, how to listen to the rhythm of the wind through the trees. He came reluctantly, sitting across from me like a stranger. "Son," I started slowly, "are you planning something with the house?" He froze. "Why would you ask that?" "I overheard a few things." I took a breath. "Appraisals. Paperwork." His jaw tightened. "Dad, you're imagining things." "I wish I were." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Rachel just thinks it's time to think about the future. This place needs too much work. You're not getting any younger." "I'm old, not useless," I said, cutting him off gently but firmly. "And I built this home with my own hands. It's not a project to be flipped." He looked away, eyes fixed on the horizon. "You always get dramatic, Dad." "No," I said quietly. "You just stopped listening." He didn't reply. Instead, he stood up, muttering something under his breath before walking back inside. I sat there for a long time, staring at the magnolia tree swaying under the evening sky. Every branch of it was heavy with blossoms, white, pure, unchanging, and I wondered how something so alive could stand so close to people who'd already started to rot from the inside. Over the next few weeks, the small things became louder. Rachel started reorganizing the house, moving furniture, boxing up old photo frames, even suggesting I donate my workshop tools. "You don't really use them anymore, right?" she said one afternoon, smiling in that way people do when they're already holding the knife. "They're part of my life," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "Of course," she said sweetly. "I just thought maybe they'd be better off with someone who still works." Her tone was too smooth, too deliberate. It wasn't suggestion. It was a test. Daniel didn't say a word during these exchanges. He'd just stand there, eyes on the floor, pretending to agree with everyone at once. One night, I found him in my workshop, rummaging through a drawer, looking for something. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. He jumped. "Oh, Dad, I was just checking for the house papers." Rachel said. "The house papers?" He swallowed. "Yeah. She thought it'd be smart to get things organized. You know, just in case something happens." I stepped closer. "And what exactly do you think is going to happen, Daniel?" He looked like a boy again for a split second, cornered and unsure. "I'm just trying to help." I nodded slowly. "If you want to help, son, then stop letting someone else speak for you." He didn't respond. He just brushed past me and left, the smell of sawdust still clinging to his jacket. After that night, I stopped asking questions. I just started watching. They thought I was an old man too tired to notice. But years of carpentry teach you how to read people, the small cracks in their voice, the way their words don't line up with their eyes. Rachel became bolder. She started referring to the house as our property when talking to friends. Once, she even corrected me in front of Daniel. "It's our home now, isn't it, Dad?" she'd said, smiling that saccharine smile. I smiled back. "Funny," I replied. "I don't remember seeing your hands on the blueprints." The air went cold. Daniel changed the subject, embarrassed, but Rachel's eyes stayed on me, two sharp blades dressed as kindness. That was the night I realized something important: when people stop respecting you, they stop seeing you. And that's when you become dangerous. A week later, the appraisers showed up, 3 men in polo shirts with clipboards and polite smiles. I greeted them at the door before Rachel could. "Morning, gentlemen," I said. "You must be lost. This house isn't for sale." They looked confused. "Ma'am called us," one of them said, glancing at his notes. "Mrs. Rachel Langston?" I smiled, calm, even friendly. "Well, she's not the owner, is she?" They exchanged uneasy glances, muttered apologies, and left. Rachel came home furious. "How dare you embarrass me like that?" she shouted. "I just told the truth," I replied evenly. "That's all embarrassment ever needs to do, show up." Daniel stood behind her, silent as ever. She stormed off, slamming the bedroom door. The sound echoed through the house, rattling something deep in me. When the dust settled, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the deed that bore only my name. They wanted control of the house. They wanted ownership. But they'd forgotten one simple thing: I still held the pen. And the moment you realize someone's trying to take what you built, you stop being a victim. You become an architect of consequences. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of calm, golden afternoon that fools you into thinking peace is permanent. The smell of roast chicken drifted through the kitchen. Rachel had insisted on cooking dinner for the family, though I knew it wasn't an act of kindness. Every gesture of hers lately came with a hidden blade. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. He'd been distant all week, working late, barely speaking to me except for polite murmurs. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument could have been. Halfway through the meal, Rachel cleared her throat. "Harold," she began sweetly, setting down her fork, "there's something important we need to talk about." I looked up, already knowing this wasn't about dinner. She reached for Daniel's hand. He hesitated but didn't pull away. "We've been thinking," she said. "This house, it's too much for you. The upkeep, the expenses. You shouldn't have to deal with that at your age." My stomach tightened. She smiled, calm, rehearsed. "So, we've decided it's time to make a change." "We?" I repeated. Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady but thin. "Dad, it's for the best. You can't live here alone anymore. It's not safe. Rachel and I found a nice place, a senior community near Knoxville. Peaceful, with good medical care. You'll love it." I stared at him. "And what about the house?" Rachel's tone softened, but her eyes didn't. "Well, we've already started the paperwork to transfer ownership. That way, we can manage it properly, maybe rent it out for income." It took me a second to process what I was hearing. They'd already started the paperwork. My hands trembled under the table. "You mean, you went behind my back?" "Dad," Daniel said quickly, "it's not like that." "It's exactly like that." Rachel sighed, feigning patience. "Harold, this is what responsible families do. We take care of our elders. You've done enough. It's time to let go." Her voice was syrup over poison. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. "This house is my life's work. Every nail in these walls has my sweat on it. And you want me to hand it over because I'm old?" Daniel stood too, his voice rising. "It's not about age, it's about reality. You can't keep living like this." "Like what?" I snapped. "Like a man who still knows what's his." The room went still. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to pause. Rachel broke the silence first. "We're not asking, Harold. We're telling you. If you don't sign, we'll have no choice but to take legal action." I looked at her, really looked. "Legal action?" I said quietly. "You forget whose name is on the deed." She smirked, the kind that only comes from someone who thinks they've already won. "Actually, about that." She opened a folder and slid a document across the table, a printed copy of what looked like a deed transfer form. My signature was already on it. Except I'd never signed it. "You forged this," I said, my voice low, controlled. Daniel's face flushed. "Dad, it's not what you think." "Then what is it, Daniel?" He stammered, glancing helplessly at Rachel. She folded her arms. "We did what needed to be done. It's called protecting assets." You wouldn't understand. I stared at my son, the boy I raised, the man I trusted with everything. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. I buried your mother in this town, I whispered. I built this home so you'd never have to struggle the way I did. And you repay me by trying to steal it? Dad. No, I said firmly. Don't call me that. Not right now. The air turned heavy. Rachel stood, scoffing. You're being dramatic. If you won't leave peacefully, we'll have to make a few calls. What calls? I asked. She reached for her phone. The authorities. We've already spoken to a lawyer. You're becoming unstable. My heart sank, but I didn't move. I just stood there, watching the people I once called family transform into strangers. Then Daniel shouted, his voice breaking through everything. Get out, Dad. Or I'll call the cops. The world stopped. The only sound left was the clock ticking behind him, each second slicing through the years between us. I could have argued. Could have shouted, begged, cursed. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at him, my son, and said, if you've already chosen her over me, then you don't need my house. You'll need your own roof when this one disappears. He frowned, confused. But I just smiled. A slow, calm, bitter smile, the kind that hides a storm. Then I turned and walked out, closing the door behind me. From the outside, I could still hear Rachel's voice, sharp, triumphant. Good riddance. We'll change the locks tomorrow. The sun had begun to set. The porch creaked under my boots, the magnolia tree swaying softly as if bowing its head. I walked down that old path, the same one I'd carried Daniel down on his first day of school. The gravel crunched beneath my feet, each step heavier than the last. And though my chest ached with a pain I'd never known, my mind was quiet. Because something inside me, something steady, patient, and precise, had just woken up. You can't take a man's home without teaching him how to build again. And I'd already decided, if they wanted me gone, I'd go. But I'd take everything they stood on with me. The road that led away from my home felt longer than it ever had before. I drove without direction, the twilight spilling across the hills like melted gold. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay where I was no longer wanted. When I finally stopped, it was at the lake, the same place where I proposed to Margaret 43 years ago. The air smelled the same, clean, earthy, with a hint of pine. The water reflected the fading light, and for a moment, it looked like the whole world was caught between fire and calm. I sat there for hours, engine off, the silence pressing against me. I kept hearing his voice, "Get out, Dad. Or I'll call the cops." I replayed it 100 times, searching for something human in it, something that sounded like my son. But there was nothing. Just cold echo. At some point, I pulled out my wallet and unfolded the photo I'd carried for years, the three of us on the front porch, Daniel no older than 6, his arms wrapped around my neck, Margaret laughing beside us. That picture had survived 3 decades of life, rain, time, even a fire that almost took the workshop once. But now, it felt like an artifact from another universe. The stars came out, one by one. I sat there until the moon climbed high and the air turned sharp. Then I whispered to the picture, "You'd know what to do, Maggie. You always did." But she wasn't there to answer. So I did what she always taught me to do when something broke, I started planning how to fix it. The next morning, I drove into town and parked outside the diner. It was early, just before sunrise. The place smelled of coffee and fried eggs, same as always. The waitress, Clara, smiled when she saw me. "Morning, Mr. Langston. Haven't seen you in a while." "Morning, Clara," I said quietly, sliding into my usual booth by the window. "Coffee, black." While I waited, I took out a notepad and a pen. Old habits. When something troubled me, I wrote it down until it made sense. At the top, I wrote, what they took. Underneath, I listed them. My home. My peace. My son. Then below that, what they forgot. My name still on the deed. My mind still sharp. I don't lose. I rebuild. When Clara came back with my coffee, I looked up at her and said, "You still see Harlan around? The real estate guy?" She smiled. "Oh, sure. Comes in every Thursday for pie. He's been talking about retirement for years but can't seem to leave it behind." I nodded. "Tell him Harold Langston needs to see him." That afternoon, I knocked on Harlan Briggs's office door. We'd known each other for 40 years, back when we both still had hair worth combing. He'd handled the legal side when I built the house, helped me register the land, even warned me once about people trying to take advantage of inheritance laws. He looked up from his desk as I walked in. "Well, I'll be damned. Harold Langston. Haven't seen you in a decade. You planning on selling something?" "Maybe," I said. "My patience." He raised a brow. "That bad, huh?" I sat down and told him everything, the forged signature, the betrayal, the eviction. I didn't cry. Didn't even tremble. I just laid it out piece by piece, like a craftsman explaining a job that went wrong. When I finished, he leaned back and whistled. "They tried to transfer the deed without your consent? That's felony-level fraud, Harold." "I'm aware," I said softly. "But I'm not looking for a courtroom. I'm looking for closure." He nodded slowly. "So what's your plan?" I smiled faintly. "You tell me, counselor. What happens if the legal owner decides he's tired of his name being tied to a house full of thieves?" Harlan leaned forward. "You sell it." "Exactly. But you'd be selling your home." "No," I said, standing. "They already took my home. I'll be selling their illusion." He grinned, the kind of grin that understood the poetry in it. "I can draw up the paperwork in a week." "Make it 2, I said. "I want them to get comfortable first." That night, I parked across the road from my old house. The windows glowed warm. Through the curtains, I could see their silhouettes, moving, laughing, living like nothing had happened. I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. What I felt was colder, clean, surgical. I thought about Margaret again. She hated confrontation. Always said, "You can't stop a storm by shouting at it, Harold. You just build your roof stronger." And that's what I was doing. I called Harlan the next day and told him to proceed. We listed the property quietly, with a note that the current occupants were temporary and would vacate within 30 days of sale. He handled the legal side. I signed what needed signing. It felt strange, liberating and sad at the same time. Like closing a book that had too many torn pages. While the process rolled forward, I found a small cottage by the lake, the same one I'd visited the night I left. The owner, an old friend of Harlan's, offered it to me at half the price. It wasn't much, 1 bedroom, a screened porch, a view of the water, but it felt right. When I moved in, the first thing I brought with me was that family photo. I set it on the shelf, facing the lake. "New chapter," I said to no one. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't hurt. 2 weeks later, Daniel called. "Dad," he said carefully, "Rachel and I need to talk. We've been getting some strange mail, notices about the property. Are you selling the house?" I waited a moment before answering. "I thought you wanted me gone, son. I just made sure you got your wish." "Dad, this isn't funny. Neither is fraud." He went silent. I could almost hear Rachel whispering behind him. Finally, he said, "You can't do this." "I already did." "Where are you going to live?" I smiled to myself. Don't worry about me. I'm exactly where I belong. After I hung up, I stood by the window of my new place, watching the sun set over the water. The lake was calm, its surface smooth as glass. I thought about all the years I'd spent teaching Daniel to work with his hands, to tell the truth, to respect what's earned. Somewhere along the way, he'd traded those lessons for shortcuts. But now, maybe, he'd remember. Because when you strip greed of its comfort, it starts to look an awful lot like regret. That night, I made a small note in my notepad. Lesson number 47, when someone mistakes your kindness for weakness, never correct them. Let time and silence do it for you. Then I closed the book, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and smiled. The storm had passed, and I was just getting started. Revenge, at my age, doesn't look like shouting or breaking things. It looks like signing papers, keeping quiet, and letting people dig their own graves with arrogance. Once I'd spoken with Harlan, things moved quickly. He knew how to keep things discreet, no gossip, no leaks. He handled the paperwork, the title checks, the listing. Everything went through under a private trust, the Margaret Foundation, in my late wife's name. When he asked what to list the house for, I gave him a number that made him raise an eyebrow. "You sure about this, Harold?" "That's high." "It's not the price I'm selling," I said. "It's the lesson I'm teaching." He nodded. Understood. The next few days were a strange kind of calm. The world felt slower, quieter, like the moment before a storm when everything holds its breath. I went about my routine, fixing small things around the cottage, walking by the lake, keeping my hands busy while my mind calculated. Meanwhile, Daniel called almost every other day. His tone shifted between anger and pleading. "Dad, this is crazy. You can't sell the house." "I already did," I'd say simply. "But it's our home." "No, son," I'd correct softly. "It's mine. You just forgot who built it." Rachel tried too, though her voice was colder, sharp with entitlement. "This is illegal, Harold," she snapped over the phone. "You can't just throw us out." I smiled. "You'd be surprised what a man can do with his own property." "Don't play games," she hissed. "We've invested in this house." "Invested?" I said. "In what? The lies? The forgery? The betrayal?" She hung up. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd heard in weeks. Harlan kept me updated. "Got 2 offers already," he told me one morning over coffee at the diner. "One's a family from out of state, the other's a company looking to buy land for redevelopment." "Take the second," I said immediately. He frowned. "That would mean they'll tear it down." "I know." "Are you sure?" I sipped my coffee. Rachel called my home old-fashioned. "Let's see how she feels watching it become a memory." He chuckled softly. "You're colder than you look, Harold." "I'm not cold," I said. "Just finished being warm to the wrong people." By the second week, Daniel and Rachel received official notice of sale. Their reaction came fast. They showed up at my new place, uninvited, angry, desperate. I saw their car pull into the dirt drive, Rachel stepping out first, her heels sinking in the soil she probably thought too low class for her. Daniel followed, face pale, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. I didn't rush to greet them. I let them knock 3 times before opening the door. "Dad, we need to talk," Daniel said. "Funny," I replied. "You didn't seem to want to talk when you had me packing my things." Rachel crossed her arms. "Let's skip the guilt act. You're making a mistake. You're going to regret this." I smiled faintly. "I regret trusting the wrong people, yes. But this? No." Daniel stepped forward, frustration rising. "You can't just sell the place out from under us. You're right, I said calmly. That's why I waited until you pushed me out first. Dad, please. Daniel, I interrupted, my tone suddenly firmer. You told me to get out. You even threatened to call the cops. You made yourself clear. So I left. But here's the thing about leaving a house you built: when you go, the foundation goes with you. Rachel rolled her eyes. You sound insane. Maybe, I said, stepping aside so they could see the papers neatly stacked on my kitchen counter. That's the sale agreement. Signed, sealed, paid in full. Daniel's eyes widened. It's final? Final, I said. The new owners take possession in 2 weeks. You'll need to vacate by then. Rachel's voice cracked. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, I said evenly. You did it to yourselves. I'm just letting the world balance itself out. They both stared at me, silent. The kind of silence that comes when someone finally realizes they've been outplayed. Why? Daniel finally asked, voice trembling. I took a deep breath. Because, son, you forgot what it means to build something. You thought inheritance was a right, not a gift. You thought a father's love was weakness. But this, all of this, was never about punishment. It's about remembering where you came from. Rachel scoffed, turning away. You're pathetic. Maybe, I said, smiling softly. But at least I'm free. The day they moved out, I didn't go to the house. I couldn't bear to watch. Harlan handled the final walkthrough and the paperwork. But I did drive by that night. Through the windows, I saw boxes stacked high, the rooms stripped bare. The laughter that used to echo through those walls had turned into silence, an empty, heavy kind of silence that fits betrayal perfectly. I parked across the road and watched as they carried the last box to the car. Daniel paused on the porch, looking around one last time. For a brief second, our eyes met through the windshield. He didn't wave. Neither did I. The magnolia tree swayed gently beside him, blooming, unbothered. And in that still moment, I realized something profound: the house was just wood and nails. The real betrayal had been in his eyes long before he said those words. The next morning, demolition began. I watched from the hilltop, the same place I'd stood years ago when the house was being built. Only this time, instead of the sound of hammers creating, I heard them destroying. Brick by brick, beam by beam, everything came down. But I didn't feel sorrow. I felt peace. Because that house had become a graveyard for memories that deserved rest. Harlan joined me as the machines tore through the final wall. You sure you're okay? He asked. I nodded. I buried the past once before when I lost Margaret. I can do it again. He sighed. You know, most folks would have gone to court, maybe disowned the kid. You just sold the whole damn history. I chuckled. When you prune a tree, you don't yell at the branches. You just cut what's rotten. He smiled. Well, you've done that, all right. Before we parted ways, I handed him an envelope, the proceeds from the sale. What's this? He asked. Half of it goes to you, I said. The rest, deposited into the Margaret Foundation account. I wanted to start doing something useful. What's the foundation for again? Elder care, I said. For folks who get pushed aside by the families they raised. Harlan looked at me, eyes soft. You're something else, Harold. Just a man cleaning up after his own storm, I replied. Weeks passed. The town whispered, as small towns do. Some called me cruel. Others called me brilliant. I didn't care either way. Daniel moved into an apartment across town. I heard he lost his job not long after, something about missed deadlines, poor performance. Rachel left him soon after that. She took most of what little money they had left and filed for divorce. Poetic, I suppose. He didn't call me again. But one evening, as I sat by the lake with my fishing rod, my phone buzzed. It was a message. From him. I don't expect forgiveness, Dad. But I understand now. You were right. I lost sight of what mattered. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. When you're ready to build something again, come find me. I'll show you how to start from scratch. I hit send and put the phone away. The sun dipped low over the water, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Margaret would have liked that ending, quiet, clean, full of justice without cruelty. Because that's what this really was. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just truth, finally standing where lies used to live. The sound of the old magnolia tree falling was the last echo of the past. After that, the house was gone. Just an empty lot and the scent of fresh soil where a lifetime once stood. Weeks turned into months. The town moved on, but the whispers didn't fade. In a place as small as ours, gossip travels faster than wine through wheat. Some folk said I'd lost my mind, others said I'd done what every betrayed parent only dreams of, teaching a lesson without raising a hand. I didn't bother defending myself. Truth doesn't need a witness when it stands that tall. One morning in early spring, I was sitting on the porch of my lakeside cottage, watching fog roll off the water when I heard a car pull into the gravel drive. It was Daniel. He looked older, thinner, worn down by months of what life looks like without the safety net of someone else's kindness. His once polished clothes were creased, and the weight of regret hung over him like a second skin. For a moment, I didn't move. Just let him stand there, awkward and unsure, like a child again. Finally, I said, "You gonna come up, or do I have to charge admission?" He gave a tired laugh and stepped onto the porch. Still got that same dry humor. "Dry humor's cheaper than therapy," I said, motioning toward the second chair. "Sit down." He did. The silence between us was heavy, but not angry. Just full. After a while, he spoke. I heard about the demolition. I drove by the lot last week. It was strange. Just gone. It was already gone long before the walls fell, I said softly. He nodded, looking down at his hands. I deserve that. No, I corrected. You earned it. He didn't argue. Just stared out at the lake, the reflection of sunlight catching the water like shards of glass. I lost everything, he said after a moment. Rachel's gone. Took the car, the savings, she even sold some of my tools before she left. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, tools can be replaced. Character can't. He sighed. I don't even know where to start, Dad. I just kept thinking I was doing the right thing, protecting the future, securing what we had. But all I did was destroy the only thing that mattered. The future? I asked. He shook his head. Family. That was the first time in years I saw him cry. Quiet tears, not of pain but of realization. I leaned back in my chair. I built a house, Daniel. But what I really built was a lesson. You just didn't learn it until you tried to sell it. He wiped his eyes and nodded slowly. You taught it well. We sat there for a long while without speaking. The sun climbed higher, the air warming, the world going on like nothing had happened. Finally, I stood and went inside. Came back with 2 cups of coffee, one for him, one for me. Here, I said, handing it to him. You look like you haven't had a good meal in weeks. He smiled faintly. You still take your coffee black? Always. Some things don't need changing. He sipped his and winced. Bitter. Truth usually is, I said. That got a weak laugh out of him. Then he looked at me, really looked, and said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't think I even deserve it." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the lake, the ripples moving like time itself, never stopping, never going backward. Finally, I said, "Forgiveness isn't something you earn, son. It's something I give, for my own peace, not yours." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," I said quietly. "Just remember it." Before he left, he hesitated by the steps. "Dad, what did you do with the money from the sale?" "Half went to charity," I said. "A foundation for seniors who've been forgotten by their families." He froze. "You did that for Mom, didn't you?" I nodded. "In her name. Margaret always believed in helping the ones nobody looked after. I figured it was time to honor her the right way." He smiled sadly. "She'd be proud of you." I met his eyes. "Would she be proud of you?" The question landed heavy. He looked down, swallowed hard, and said, "Not yet." I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "Then start there," I said, handing it to him. Inside was a check, not much, just enough to rent a small place and start over. He blinked. "I don't deserve this." "You're right," I said. "But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the boy who once helped me plant that magnolia tree. Maybe there's still some of him left in you." He stared at the check for a long time before tucking it into his pocket. "There is," he whispered. As he walked to his car, I called out, "Daniel." He turned. "Don't come back here until you've built something that's truly yours. Not bought, not borrowed. Built." He nodded. "I will." Then he drove off down the dirt road, dust trailing behind like fading memory. The days that followed were quiet again. Peaceful. Sometimes, I'd catch myself glancing at the phone, wondering if he'd call, not out of need, but out of love. But I didn't wait for it. Instead, I threw myself into the foundation work. We started small, helping a few local seniors with home repairs, groceries, companionship. I used the money from the sale to fund materials and hire young volunteers from town. Every nail hammered, every wall fixed felt like redemption, not just for them, but for me. I wasn't building houses anymore. I was building peace. A few months later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Daniel. No return address, just his handwriting on the front. Inside was a photo, him standing in front of a small wooden shop with a sign that read Langston Carpentry and Repairs. Below it, he'd written, "Started from scratch, just like you said. One step at a time. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on you." I stared at that picture for a long time. The shop wasn't fancy, just a shed and a sign, but it was his. Built by his own hands. I smiled. Folded the letter carefully and placed it next to the framed photo of Margaret. "You'd be proud," I whispered. He finally learned. The lake breeze drifted through the window, carrying the scent of spring and sawdust, a smell that once meant life, now meant rebirth. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and let the peace settle in. The storm had passed. The revenge was done. And in the quiet after the storm, I realized something simple. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a father, sitting by the water, watching the son who once betrayed him finally build something worth keeping. It's strange how time moves differently once peace returns. The days don't rush anymore. They stretch, long, gentle, patient. I spend most mornings on the porch now, coffee in hand, watching the lake turn from silver to gold under the rising sun. The magnolia blossoms have started growing near the edge of the water, carried there by the wind years ago, I suppose. It's funny, even after the tree was gone, life found a way to keep its memory alive somewhere else. Maybe that's how love works. It never dies. It just takes root somewhere new. Sometimes I wonder what Margaret would say if she could see all this now, the house gone, the son redeemed, the quiet peace that settled where pain once lived. I think she'd smile that soft smile of hers and say, "You handled it your way, Harold. The way only you could." And maybe she'd be right. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't seek to destroy. I just built differently, stronger, smarter, quieter. Because revenge, when done right, isn't about hurting others. It's about reclaiming yourself. A few weeks ago, Daniel came back again, not out of guilt this time, but gratitude. He parked the same way he used to when he was young, careful not to crush the grass near the porch. He carried a small wooden box with him, polished to perfection. "I made this," he said, handing it to me. "Used Mom's old chisel set. Thought you might want it." I opened the lid. Inside was a small carving of the magnolia tree, delicate, detailed, alive. Beneath it, engraved in tiny letters, were the words, "Roots remember." For a long time, I couldn't speak. I just ran my fingers over the smooth wood, the curves, the grooves, the life in it. "Beautiful," I finally said. He smiled, but it was humble this time, no pride, no ego. Just peace. We sat together for hours, talking about everything and nothing. About work, about the foundation, about how sometimes you have to lose everything before you understand what was worth keeping. Before he left, he said something that stayed with me. "Dad, I think I get it now, why you sold the house, why you didn't fight me with anger. You wanted me to learn what you always knew, a man's worth isn't measured by what he owns, but by what he can build again after losing it." I looked at him then, really looked, and saw the boy I raised, standing in the man he'd finally become. "Exactly," I said. "Now you sound like your mother." He laughed, nodded, and hugged me. The kind of hug that says thank you for not giving up. And when he drove away this time, I didn't feel the old ache of loss. I just felt peace, full, quiet, complete. That night, I walked down to the lake. The water was still, the sky full of stars. I took the wooden carving of the magnolia tree and placed it on a flat stone near the shore. It caught the moonlight, glowing faintly like something sacred. I stood there a long time, thinking about how far things had come, from betrayal to justice, from anger to forgiveness. And I realized something I wish I'd known sooner. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone pay. It's about building a life so strong, so calm, so steady, that they have to live knowing they could never break you. Because strength doesn't shout. It stands quietly, unshaken, and lets time do the talking. When people in town ask me if I ever miss the old house, I tell them the truth. "No," I say, smiling. "The memories are still here. The walls were never what made it home, it was the people, the love, the lessons. The walls just gave them a place to echo." Some nod, some don't understand. That's fine. Not everyone has lived through the kind of storm that teaches you how to find calm in the wreckage. But those who have, they always understand. And maybe that's why people keep finding their way to my channel, to hear stories like this one. Stories about love, betrayal, justice, and peace. Stories that remind us that even when life takes everything from you, it never takes your ability to rebuild. So, if you're still listening, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, or pushed aside by those you gave everything to, I want you to remember this. You don't have to shout to win. You don't have to fight to be strong. You just have to stay standing long enough for truth to catch up. Because it always does. And when it does, you won't need revenge. You'll have peace. If stories like this one speak to you, stories of resilience, redemption, and the quiet strength that comes after pain, subscribe to this channel. Because there's more to tell. And sometimes, the next story might just help you find your own peace, too.